Be strong.
Leon sees one of the bandits charging at Lunan with a sword, so he runs as fast as he can to stop it from happening. His wild eyes widen in fear as he panics. To make matters worse, the white-haired girl doesn't even know what's going on, so she can't even help herself. She's too busy fighting the trauma her psycho brother caused her. The enemy's sword is just a few inches from Lunan's head at this point, and it looks like the poor girl is done for, but that's when our boy takes care of the situation. The next thing we see is the bandit lying unconscious on the icy ground with Leon's foot right on top of his head. The furious swordsman tells the guy to keep quiet, and threatens to give him a one-way ticket to the afterlife if he opens his mouth. From the look on our boy's face, he's in no mood for games. He tells the criminal to answer only the questions he asks, and promises to pull out one bone from his body each time he refuses to answer. Now that's some mafia boss-type torture right there. The subdued bandit doesn't say anything in response, since all he can practically do at this point is groan in pain. I mean, there's a foot on his head after all. While restraining the scumbag, Leon glances at Lunan to check on her, and he sees her panting heavily. He also notices that she still managed to put up a mana barrier despite trembling in fear. He believes that the only reason they're alive is because of her. It turns out that even after panicking, Lunan was still able to put up a protective barrier, and Leon finds this very impressive. The traumatized girl finally recovers from her episode, and gets up to join our boy who has already begun his interrogation. Now that the hostage is safe, Leon asks the bandit to confirm if he's a member of the Snow Tiger Claw, and the guy admits that he is. The swordsman then asks him how many of them were in the cave, and the guy reveals that there are a total of 39 scumbags in the forest. After getting that information, Leon asks how many hostages are left, and the guy confesses that there's only one left inside with them. Upon hearing this, the swordsman thinks that it's just as he expected. His thoughts are interrupted when the kid they just rescued reveals that the last hostage is his younger sister. The terrified kid begs Leon to save her, so Lunan comforts him and assures him that they'll save his younger sister. However, our boy quickly tells his fellow trainee that she shouldn't make promises like that. Lunan protests since she believes that they're going to save the little girl, so Leon gets rattled and finally tells her why he said she shouldn't make any promises. He explains that they can actually get rid of the bandits, but it would be better to call in support if they really want to save hostages. There are 36 bandits along with the Snow Tiger Claw's leader left, which means that going in alone could be very dangerous. After he explains this, Lunan suggests blowing the whistle, and Leon agrees with her, claiming that he thinks it's a good idea. As such, the girl blows the whistle as hard as she can, and although they can't hear anything, the trained instructors probably heard it. Leon is intrigued that he can't hear anything even though he's standing right next to her, so he concludes that this must be why Lemmer gave it to them. Unfortunately, his thoughts are suddenly interrupted when the bandits discover what they're up to. It turns out that one of the bad guys can hear the silent alarm, so he informs the others and points to the two trainees. The bandits get up to attack, realizing that their hideout has been discovered while Leon and Lunan are utterly confused. They're shocked that someone there had senses sharp enough to detect the whistle, and this bothers our boy because even he couldn't hear the sound. The bandits prepare to fight, so Leon takes the guy he captured, hoping to bargain with the bandits. Leon holds his sword against the guy's neck, threatening to slit his throat. However, the leader of the Snow Tiger Claw doesn't even seem slightly bothered. He's surprised that such a young guy came all the way to his hideout and admits that Leon caused such a scene. He then asks our boy who he called with the whistle, but the swordsman bluntly informs him that it's none of his business. Leon pulls the bandit's head up, causing the scumbag to tremble even more. He then informs the scar-faced leader that he wants to trade hostages. The man is taken aback by this statement, so our boy explains that he'll release their colleague if they hand over the little girl. Not surprisingly, the crazy leader doesn't even give a shit about the guy Leon captured. The man bursts into laughter, revealing that he doesn't care if the bastard dies or not. Unlike the hostage, the guy is of no value to the Snow Tiger Claw's leader, and he makes this very clear to Leon. He then asks our boy if he'd like to see the little girl's head roll, and tells him to put down his sword immediately if he doesn't want that. The little girl sees the man's sword and gets even more terrified. Hearing the man's response, Leon figures out exactly what he has to do. So, he tells Lunan to turn around with the boy for a little bit, asking them to stay that way until he gives a signal. The white-haired girl doesn't say anything, and just follows the instructions. That's when our boy goes all Mortal Kombat on these guys. He starts by slitting his hostage's throat, and as the guy's blood splashes all over the place, the other bandits are stunned. Seeing the way he just killed one of their own, they're all in shock, so they're not even able to attack him immediately. While they're still trying to process what he just did, Leon throws his sword at them. The blade impales one of the bandits, who couldn't even dodge the hit. The guy falls to the ground and almost hits the scared little girl. Once that guy is down, our boy quickly tells Lunan to create a frost fig using aura. The white-haired girl doesn't waste a second before springing into action. Lunan quickly slams her hand against the ground to activate the frost fog, which causes all the snow on the ground to lift into the air and blast the bandits. In a matter of seconds, their vision is totally obscured by the fog, and they're unable to see anything around them. While they're losing their bearings, R sneaks around the fog to rescue the little girl at the back. He quietly picks her up and leaves there. That's about the same time the bandits finally check to see that Leon has run off with the hostage. The scumbags know that they can't afford to lose that hostage, so they instantly begin to search for him. The senior one orders the rest to seek him out, claiming that nobody should go easy on him when they find him. Meanwhile, we see that Leon is hiding behind a tree with Lunan and the hostages they rescued. The kids are sleeping near them, and he suggests that they passed out because of the cold. He explains that they can't run away with the kids unconscious, and he doesn't know what the bandits will do to the village either. Even though there are a lot of scumbags, the swordsman thinks that they should get rid of the bad guys right there on the hill. So, he intends to go back and finish what he started. He tells Lunan to stay and protect the kids, but she's very concerned about the nasty cut on his arm. She informs him that his arm is bleeding, but he quickly assures her that he's fine, promising to get rid of the bandits as quickly as possible. He's about to promise that he'll come back when Lunan suddenly tugs on his coat. He turns around to see her kneeling like a helpless person, and she begs him not to go. She feels that it's too dangerous for him to fight while he's already injured, especially when the instructors would probably arrive with support soon. Lunan suggests that they just wait there together until the others join them, but her words are unable to change his mind. Leon just gives her a knowing look in response, and she already understands that he's not going to stay. Our boy kneels in front of her so he can look her in the eyes, and then tells her that he understands how scary the battlefield is for her. He explains that it's the same for trainees like them and even experienced swordsmen. But then he reveals that there's even something more terrifying than the battlefield. This gets her full attention, and then Leon informs her that what's even scarier is the feeling of not being able to do anything, because of this same fear. Upon hearing these words, Lunan can relate very much to what he just said. She totally understands, because she's been in that position, and still finds herself there. Leon reminds her that these bandits have committed horrible and unforgivable acts, and he's sure that some of the people that were slaughtered were those that wanted to protect the village, as well as those who fought until the end to protect their loved ones. For this reason alone, the young swordsman believes that they can't just turn a blind eye to all the deaths and other atrocities committed by the Snow Tiger Claw. After all, they're both swordsmen of the Zygardes, which means that they have to accomplish their mission until the very end, so that they can fulfill the wills of those who were sacrificed, as well as protect those who remain. The pep talk goes on, and Leon admits that he doesn't know exactly what her brother did to her. But even at that, he informs her that the more scared she becomes, the more her brother's shadow grows, which will lead to fear swallowing her even further. Our boy tells Lunan not to keep letting fear drag her around just because she's afraid, and these words seem to be hitting hard as he says them. Leon literally calls her complete name just so he can drive his point home, and then he informs Lunan's Leon that she's the only one who can protect herself and the people she treasures. The words sink in, and she's almost pushed to tears. Just then, the swordsman reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out something. He gives it to her, and then tells her that what they do henceforth will be her decision to make. Leon breaks it to her, revealing that she no longer needs to stay in the shadows. After saying this, he takes his sword and makes his way back to the cave like the chat he is. Meanwhile, Lunan remains in the same spot, reflecting on everything her friend just told her. She's lost for words, but one this that she's sure of is that she wants to change. The scared girl wants to escape from her current situation, and she certainly doesn't want to be tied down by the past anymore. Lunan holds the toy squirrel that Leon gave her, and decides that henceforth, she wants to protect what is important to her. She thinks about everything she's been through. Tears flood her eyes and roll down her cheeks. She cries, knowing that she no longer wants to reside in the dark shadows. From now on, she wants to step forward into the bright light. The scene changes, and the next thing we see is our boy in the middle of a brutal fight with the Snow Tiger Claw bandits. Leon's out here slitting throats like a ruthless samurai, and with the cold look on his face, you can tell that he's just getting started. The other bandits see him slaughtering all their men, so the senior among them desperately shouts for someone to kill the blonde swordsman. The guy gets frustrated and just keeps yelling at them to stop our boy. In his mind, it shouldn't be that hard to kill just one kid. But Leon just keeps slaughtering all the bandits that come his way, leaving a trail of corpses in his wake. At this point, even the Snow Tiger Claw's leader starts to panic because he doesn't understand why his men can't stop one kid. The scar-faced man keeps shouting, while Leon locks his eyes on the target. All of a sudden, two of the bandits try to sneak up on him. One leaps into the air behind him, while the other appears from the side. But before either of them can land a hit, he senses their presence, and then turns around to block the attacks. While he's facing that, the leader of the group takes the chance to attack from behind too. The old man thinks that Kid is practically finished now, and tries to get a cheap win by sneaking up on our boy, and the moment his sword is raised, Leon instantly senses the surprise attack coming from behind him. The leader lands a killer strike that even cracks the earth beneath them, but when the dust settles, he's shocked to see that he missed the target. Or better still, our boy swiftly dodged the attack. The man is horrified when he doesn't see the deadly swordsman, so he begins to wonder where the kid vanished to. While he's still staring at the crack in shock, Leon appears behind him like a ghost and calls him a coward. He asks the old man how long he plans to keep waiting for such an opening, and when he hears the voice, a wave of horror washes over him. At this point, he probably already knows that he's done for, and sure enough, Leon makes sure that he never kidnaps anyone ever again by slashing the man's head clean off his shoulders. Blood splatters everywhere, and the ruthless swordsman makes his way into the cave. Seeing how their leader just got decapitated, they conclude that the blonde kid must be a monster. They're terrified of how strong he is at such a young age, and there's no other way to explain it than believing he's a monster. They're even starting to doubt that he's actually a trainee. Leon tells the remaining bandits to surrender, and tells them that their leader is now dead. But before he can finish talking, he senses yet another surprise attack from behind him. With incredible speed, he turns around to block the object with his sword, and that's when he sees the person responsible. The guy is disappointed at how ridiculous the bandits have been against the trainee, and it turns out that he's their chief. He's trying to comprehend how they're all dying at the hands of a little kid, and this disgraceful performance just makes him think that they'll only embarrass themselves if they enter the North and South Alliance this way. After berating his men, he turns to Leon and admits that the kid looks wealthy. The chief presumes that the swordsman comes from a wealthy family, and believes that this is even better for him, because he was worried that their gifts won't be enough. However, now that he's seen the new target, he eagerly lunges at the kid to attack. This guy reveals that his name is Vukin, and as he swings his sword against Leon, he's glad that the heavens haven't abandoned him just yet since they brought a rich hostage for him. Vukin lands the powerful sword strike, and promises to take all the trainees as hostages, but our boy blocks the attack. Vukin appears to be a lot stronger than all the other members of the Snow Tiger Claw, because Leon has a hard time holding back his strike. He struggles to hold the chief's sword back because of just how powerful the guy is. This makes Leon conclude that Vukin must be a sword user. He manages to find his footing, and continues to hold back the chief's strength. But their little clash is interrupted when he hears some other bandits saying that they've found Lunan and the hostages. We then see that the white-haired girl is equally struggling to hold off the bandit who found her and the kids. She blocks the sword, but it's clear that she can't hold on much longer. Meanwhile, Rayon becomes very worried because he knows that she's probably not ready to fight yet. He decides that he needs to go help her, but it appears that his concern pissed off the bandit chief. Vukin intensifies his attacks, feeling offended that Leon dared to look away when he's standing before him. He taunts our boy, asking him if he's worried about the others outside. But before Leon even says anything, a crazy look appears on Vukin's face as he tells the swordsman that they can now have some real fun. Rain already knows that this means something bad, so he curses mentally, knowing that things are about to get a lot more difficult. Meanwhile, outside the cave, the other scumbags are furious because Lunan keeps using strange skills against them. Since they're not exactly lethal, one of them concludes that she has probably never killed anyone before. As such, he grows a lot more confident and then demands that she hand over the hostages instead of fooling herself. Despite his harsh tone, Lunan stands her ground and remains ready for a fight. She feels that she has to protect the kids no matter what, so even when the bandit charges at her, she doesn't fold. As the guy runs violently toward her, she realizes that she will have to kill him if she really wants to protect the children. Thankfully, she doesn't think he's a difficult opponent, so she tightens the grip on her sword and prepares to send him to the afterlife. The bandit doesn't slow down, so she keeps telling herself that she can actually do it. Lunan braces herself for the clash, remembering what Leon told her earlier. But just when it looks like she's finally getting her shit together, the PTSD kicks in again, making her see her evil brother right there in front of her. Fear grips her immediately, because her brother is her #1 weakness. Everything goes dark all of a sudden, and she loses consciousness of her surroundings. Lunan starts to feel powerless when she sees her brother again, so she decides that she needs to shake him away from her mind. As you can imagine, that's a lot easier said than done, especially for someone who got traumatized as a kid. Lunan can't forget the fear that she felt from that day, and this makes her doubt that she can even protect something the way Leon does. She feels very helpless because she can't even swing a sword properly at a time like this when she needs it most, so all of this just adds up to her getting more afraid. She's never managed to protect anything up until now, and as the doubt swallows her, a friendly voice pulls her out. Lunan hears Leon calling her name, so she opens her eyes, and that's when she sees the young swordsman encouraging her. Even though he's in the middle of a sword fight with the bandit chief, he still encourages her to face her fears. He tells her that she can do it, but she's still not sure she can. Lunan is still afraid, so our boy speaks to her deeply. He appears to the terrified girl sitting in the room and stretches out his hand, telling her to come with him. Lunan takes his hand, and he pulls her out of the darkness to step into the light. As this image fades away, the white-haired trainee realizes what Leon just did for her, so she decides that she has to thank him for giving her courage. But first, she also has to prove that she won't fail him, so she summons all the newfound courage to face the trauma of her brother. Lunan takes her sword and slashes the image of her evil brother, causing it to vanish. As the image disappears, she lunges forward to counter the bandit's attack. The girl who was once afraid faces her fears head-on, revealing that she also has to thank Leon for helping her move forward. And with this in mind, she takes out the bandit with a single slash of her sword. She does this, grateful for the fact that Leon believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself. Meanwhile, Vukan sees how she just offed another of his men, so he gets more pissed that everyone is losing to the kids. The chief feels that all the other bandits are useless, but just when he says this, he meets a very unpleasant surprise. Our boy suddenly hits back at Vukan, telling him that they're not just little kids. The chief is horrified to see that Leon's sword is now glowing like it's on fire, and while he's still processing this discovery, the blonde swordsman explains that Lunan is a child who overcame her dark past on her own, before adding that she has a kinder and stronger heart than anyone he knows. At this point, huge flames surround our boy, and he concludes by calling Lunan a swordsman who has overcome trials. He then completes the activation of his 1000 Flames technique First Flames. After this, Leon unleashes another technique called the Flower Falls, and for this lethal blow, he uses his flaming sword to cut through Vukan's body. The chief coughs blood instantly, ending the fight for good. A while later, we see that our boy has taken out the trash. He checks a chest there, while Lunan takes care of the siblings Theg rescued. While going through the box, he thinks about how he is going to check for traps around the hideout before the instructors arrive. His thoughts trail off when he suddenly finds a rare item inside the box. It's a two-tone flower, so Leon knows that it's a rather rare miracle herb. But then again, he wonders if the Snow Tiger Claw bandits actually massacred the entire village to get their hands on the little flower. While he's pondering on this, someone else appears, sounding very disappointed that the fun is over already. Leon and Lunan turn to see who's talking, and they are met by some guy wearing animal print clothes like a caveman. The stranger suddenly recognizes the two-tone flower in our boy's hand, claiming that it's the same one Vukan had. His face lights up as he asks if they killed all the others, and that's when we learn that this stranger is the North and South Alliance's Eternal Bandits chief. Leon asks what would happen if he did kill them, so the guy admits that he's pretty bold, claiming that it's okay since he's skilled. Our boy bluntly asks him if he's part of the North and South Alliance, which the man confirms, and introduces himself as Richter. Leon has heard this name before, and recalls the story of a genius swordsman who entered the North and South Alliance with just a sword to his name, but then became the leader in only 10 years. Our boy feels that the Snow Tiger Claw bandits don't even compare to Richter, who is a real martial artist with real skills. Richter identifies them as children of the renowned Zygarde family, and also determines that they're trainees, since there's nothing engraved on their swords. After displaying his smarts, he probably wants to show just how strong he is too, so he suddenly asks the nervous kids if he should kill them. So far, our boy only had the chance to toy away with other kids of his age. But now, we're finally in a face-off against a real opponent, who might overclass Leon in terms of strength. How will he deal with such an adversary? And is there a way for him to actually come out on top against a top-grade martial artist?